They mocked her in a job interview for her hair. Then she shocked everyone. Loveth woke up early that morning with a smile on her face. She had ironed her black suit the night before and polished her shoes until they shined. The job interview meant everything to her. It wasn't just a job, it was a chance to change her life. She stood in front of the mirror and admired her natural curls. They were thick, bold, and beautiful. Her mother always told her, "Your hair is your crown. Don't ever hide it." Loveth believed those words. But as she prepared her documents and placed them neatly in her brown folder, she whispered a small prayer. "God, let today be my day." She carried herself with hope. Yet deep inside, a tiny voice asked if the world would ever truly see her for who she was, not just how she looked. She walked out of her small apartment, her heels clicking on the pavement. Her heart pounded with nervous energy as she entered the tall glass building. The company logo was shining like gold at the entrance. She whispered again, "This is my chance." Loveth was escorted into the waiting room. Other candidates sat stiffly, scrolling through their phones, each dressed in sharp suits. Some glanced at her and then at her hair. She noticed the stares but looked away, clutching her folder tightly. When her name was called, she stood up and walked into the interview room. A long table stretched across the space with 4 people seated behind it. 3 men and 1 woman. The oldest man sat quietly at the far end, his face unreadable. The younger white man in the middle leaned back in his chair with a smirk. "So, Loveth," he began, dragging her name as if it tasted strange in his mouth. "Tell us why you think you belong in a company like this." The way he said belong sent a chill down her spine. But she took a deep breath, lifted her chin, and answered confidently about her skills, her years of experience, and the results she had delivered for her previous company. The woman interviewer nodded slightly, but the smirking man chuckled. "Interesting. And you came here with that hair? Don't you think it's a little unprofessional? Our clients prefer a certain image." He waved his hand around his head, mocking her curls. The other 2 men chuckled softly, trying to hide their laughter. Loveth's stomach twisted. Her throat felt dry. She looked at them, then at her folder. Her mind screamed, "Stay strong," but her heart cracked. She forced herself to finish answering the questions, even as the recruiter shook his head like she was wasting his time. When it was over, she walked out with shaky legs. The laughter echoed in her ears. On the bus ride home, Loveth stared out of the window. The city looked busy and full of life, but inside she felt empty. She replayed the moment again and again. His words cut deep. With that hair, she touched her curls and felt shame creeping in. For the first time, she wished she had straightened it. But then she remembered her mother's words again. "Your hair is your crown." Tears filled her eyes. She pressed her forehead against the glass and let the tears roll silently. By the time she reached her small apartment, the tears had dried, but her heart was heavy. She lay on her bed, staring at the ceiling. Doubt whispered in her ears, "Maybe you're not good enough. Maybe you don't belong." She closed her eyes, but sleep refused to come. The next few days were long. She kept checking her email, hoping for a positive reply. Each time she saw no new messages, her hopes sank lower. She tried to distract herself with chores, but the humiliation stayed fresh in her mind. It was not just rejection. It was being laughed at for simply being herself. A week later, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something made her pick up. "Hello, is this Loveth?" "Yes, this is she." Her voice was soft. "This is Mr. Anderson, the CEO of the company you interviewed with last week." Her heart skipped. She sat up straight. "Oh, yes, sir. I want to apologize for what happened in that interview. What you experienced was wrong. I was in the room, listening silently, and I saw everything." Loveth froze. She remembered the older man at the far end. She hadn't realized he was the CEO. "I saw your confidence," he continued. "I saw your talent. And I want you to know that you belong in this company. I would like to offer you the position directly." Her mouth fell open. "Sir, are you serious?" "Very serious," he said warmly. "I believe in giving the right people the chance they deserve. Report to the office on Monday. My assistant will send you the details." Loveth covered her mouth as tears spilled. This time, they were tears of joy. Monday morning came. Loveth stepped into the tall glass building again, But this time her walk was different. Her heels clicked with purpose. She wore her natural hair with pride, her curls bouncing like they had their own confidence. She noticed a few stares, but she didn't care. The receptionist smiled at her politely and guided her to her new office. It was small but bright, with her name already printed on the door. She touched it with trembling fingers. As she settled in, Mr. Anderson walked in and welcomed her. "We're glad to have you here, Loveth. Tomorrow, I want you to join the strategy meeting. I've heard you have strong ideas, and I want the board to hear them." Her heart raced. Tomorrow? She had to prepare fast, but she nodded firmly. "Yes, sir." When he left, Loveth sat down at her desk. She pulled out her notepad and began sketching her ideas. She stayed late into the evening, lost in the excitement of proving herself. For the first time in a long time, she felt seen. The next day, the big meeting arrived. The boardroom was packed with senior managers, all dressed in sharp suits. Loveth entered with her notes, her palms sweaty but her back straight. She scanned the room and froze. Sitting among them, arms folded, was the same recruiter who had mocked her. His smirk was gone, replaced by a stiff jaw. Loveth felt her throat tighten, but she steadied herself. She reminded herself, "This is your moment." Mr. Anderson cleared his throat. "Today, we have Loveth presenting her strategy." All eyes turned to her. For a second, silence weighed heavy. Then Loveth spoke. Her voice was calm but powerful. She explained her vision step by step. She showed how the company could expand into new markets, attract younger clients, and increase profits. She used stories, real examples, and clear numbers. As she spoke, heads began to nod. Pens scribbled. Even the recruiter leaned forward, his smirk gone. By the end, the room burst into applause. And Mr. Anderson said proudly, "This is why we hired her." Loveth's heart swelled. She caught the recruiter's eyes. He was clapping too, but his face was red. For once, she wasn't the one shrinking in shame. She was the one standing tall. Loveth returned to her new office after the presentation, her heart still racing. She couldn't stop smiling. For the first time in a long while, she felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be. She pulled out her phone and called her mother. "Mama," she whispered when her mother picked up. "I did it." They clapped for me. Her mother's laughter filled the phone. "My daughter, I told you. Nobody can hide your light. It will shine whether they like it or not." Loveth wiped her eyes. "Mama, you should have seen their faces. Even the man who laughed at me before, he clapped too." "Good," her mother said firmly. "Let him clap. Let him know you are bigger than his insults." Loveth promised to visit home soon, but when she hung up, she sat quietly for a moment. She thought about that man again, the recruiter. Why had he laughed at her? What gave him the right? A part of her wanted revenge, but a bigger part wanted to rise above it. She whispered to herself, "The best revenge is success." The next morning, as she entered the building, she noticed whispers. People in the hallway were talking about her presentation. Some smiled at her, others gave her curious looks. For the first time, she was being noticed not for her hair, but for her brain. But the recruiter was not done. He cornered her in the elevator, his jaw tight. "Don't get too comfortable," he muttered. "One good presentation doesn't mean you belong here." Loveth's heart skipped, but she met his eyes. "Maybe not. But my ideas will keep speaking for me." The elevator doors opened, and she walked out, leaving him standing there, his fists clenched. That night, Loveth worked late, polishing another idea. She wanted to be ready for any challenge. Deep inside, she knew more tests would come, and she refused to be broken again. Days turned into weeks. Loveth worked hard, delivering one impressive report after another. The CEO praised her often in meetings. Some colleagues grew warmer, asking for her input. But the recruiter, whose name was David, kept his distance. Every time she spoke, he avoided her eyes. One Friday, Mr. Anderson called her into his office. "Loveth," he said kindly, "next week, you'll lead a presentation for our biggest client. It's important, and I trust you can handle it." Loveth's stomach flipped. This was huge. "Yes, sir. I'll be ready." When she left his office, she overheard voices in the hallway. David was speaking to another manager. "She's too new to handle that client. She'll mess it up." The words stung, but Loveth clenched her fists. She promised herself she would not only deliver, but shine brighter than ever. She began preparing day and night, reading reports, studying the client's needs, rehearsing her points in front of the mirror. She told herself, "You've come too far to fail now." The big day arrived. Loveth stood before the client team, her heart pounding. They were powerful people, the kind who could decide the future of the company with one decision. She took a deep breath and began. Her presentation flowed like water. She didn't just give numbers, she told a story. She explained how their products could reach new markets and how digital campaigns could connect with young customers. She used her own background, her culture, to show fresh perspectives that nobody had thought about. By the end, the clients' faces were glowing with interest. They nodded, whispered among themselves, and finally clapped. "This," one of them said, "is the kind of strategy we've been waiting for." Mr. Anderson smiled proudly. But David sat stiffly, his jaw locked. When the meeting ended, Loveth walked out with her head high. For the first time, she felt not just like an employee, but a leader. That night, as Loveth sat alone in her apartment, her phone buzzed again. It was an email from Mr. Anderson. "Congratulations, Loveth." The client was impressed. "They have agreed to a partnership. This is a big win for us, and it's thanks to you." She read it again and again, her hands trembling. She couldn't believe how far she had come in just a few weeks. From being laughed at to being the reason the company won a deal. She fell on her knees and whispered, "Thank you, God. Thank you for not letting me give up." But deep down, she knew this was just the beginning. Success was sweet, but it also brought more eyes, more jealousy, and more challenges. And David was still watching, waiting for her to fall. Loveth tightened her jaw. "Let him wait. I'm not falling. Not now. Not ever." The following Monday, Loveth entered the office to a surprise. Her desk was decorated with balloons and flowers. A card on the table read, "Congratulations, Loveth. You inspire us." Signed by several colleagues. She blinked back tears. For once, she felt celebrated. She wasn't invisible anymore. But when she looked across the room, she saw David watching from his desk, his face pale with anger. His eyes burned with something darker than dislike. Loveth looked away, determined not to let him steal her joy. But she didn't know that David had already made a plan to bring her down. The office felt different after the client win. Loveth walked with her head high, and her colleagues looked at her with respect. But she also noticed how David's glares grew colder by the day. He rarely spoke to her, and when he did, it was sharp, dismissive, or coated in sarcasm. Still, Loveth didn't let it bother her. She kept focusing on her work, believing that her results would silence every insult. Yet deep down, she knew David wouldn't stop until he tried something drastic. And she was right. A week later, Loveth submitted a detailed report for an upcoming campaign. She had spent nights perfecting it, cross-checking every number. But during the executive review, David raised his hand. "This report has errors," he said coldly. "It doesn't meet our standards." The room fell silent. Loveth's heart pounded. She knew she hadn't made a mistake. Mr. Anderson frowned and handed her the report. She flipped through it and froze. Numbers had been changed. Someone had tampered with it. Her chest tightened. David leaned back with a smirk. Loveth looked at Mr. Anderson. "Sir, with all respect, this is not my report. Someone has edited it." Murmurs filled the room. Some doubted her. Others looked suspicious. Mr. Anderson raised his hand. "We'll investigate this matter." "Loveth, don't worry. Truth always comes out." David's smirk faltered for a moment. But Loveth's hand shook. She walked out of the room and went to the restroom. There, she locked herself in a stall and cried silently. She had worked too hard to be dragged down by lies. The investigation lasted days. IT traced the changes made to the report. And when the truth came out, everyone was stunned. The edits had been made from David's own computer. He was called into the CEO's office. Loveth wasn't there, but whispers spread quickly across the office floor. By the end of the day, news broke David had been suspended. Lowell said a disk stumped. She felt relief, but also sadness. She didn't want revenge to come this way, but she knew it had to happen. That evening, Mr. Anderson called her in. "Loveth, you stood firm. I'm proud of you." People like David think they can tear others down, but the truth always rises. And so do you. Loveth's eyes watered. Thank you for believing in me. He smiled. It's not about me believing in you. It's about you believing in yourself. Months passed. Loveth grew stronger, leading more projects and winning more clients. Her name began to carry weight in the company. People sought her out for advice, and junior staff looked up to her as a mentor. One day, Mr. Anderson invited her to his office. Loveth, we have decided to promote you. You'll now be the head of strategy. Her mouth fell open. Sir, me? Yes, you. You've earned it. You've brought in millions for this company, and more importantly, you've brought in fresh vision. You are the future. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she nodded. Thank you, sir. When she returned to her desk, the entire office clapped for her. It was loud, thunderous, and unstoppable. The sound washed over her like healing rain. She remembered the first time she walked in here, laughed at, humiliated, broken. And now she was here, respected, celebrated, unstoppable. The next week, she stood before the entire company, delivering her first big presentation as head of strategy. The auditorium was full. Every employee was present, clapping as she walked on stage. Loveth smiled, her curls glowing under the lights. When I first came here, she began, some people doubted me. Some even laughed at me. But today, I stand before you to remind us all of one thing. Talent, hard work, and resilience will always silence hate. The room erupted in applause. She looked across the hall and saw David, sitting silently in the audience. He had been reinstated but stripped of authority, forced now to watch the very woman he once mocked rise higher than him. And this time, when the entire room clapped, he had no choice but to join them. After the event, Loveth went home. She sat on her bed, the city lights glowing outside her window. She thought about the journey, the laughter, the humiliation, the tears, the struggle. But she also thought about her mother's words. Your hair is your crown. Don't ever hide it. Loveth touched her curls, smiling. She finally understood. Her crown had never slipped. Not even for a second. It had always been there, carrying her through the storm. And now she wore it proudly, shining brighter than ever. Final lesson. Discrimination may humiliate you, but cannot stop your light. When you believe in yourself, when you refuse to bow down to hate, even the very hands that try to pull you down will one day be forced to clap for your success. If you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe.